All right. Welcome everyone to another installment of Gardens and Grub, where we're going to talk about a delicious summer fruit you all have enjoyed, I'm sure, in the past, if you're not allergic. And we're going to talk today for about 20 minutes about this delicious ingredient. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So you feel free to ask me about these gorgeous foods, or you can ask me anything about food, plants, gardening. And if I don't know, I will find out for you. So why don't we start? Today we're going to talk about, which one of these am I going to pick here? Melons. So last week we spoke about cucumbers. So we're going to talk about another member of the cucurbit family, and those are melons. Now, the ones that we're going to present today are not an exhaustive list. There's so much diversity in the melon category. And so we're going to talk about 6 or 7 of them today. But trust me, there are so many different kinds out there. So I recommend that if you see a particular melon, Google it and find out if it's a muskmelon or not. And we're going to talk about how to pick a good melon today, and how to prepare it, because this is just such a wonderful, diverse group of things to eat and enjoy. So right now, melons are coming into season. Through our beautiful global food system, you can get melons year round. It's just in the summer, they tend to be cheaper. So previously, you would only be able to find melons in the summer. Now, in the summer, melons here are cheaper because they don't have to be trucked from around the world. So about 80% of the melons in the world are produced in China. The Chinese culture, agricultural culture, is fantastic. They are able to produce so much food because there's a large agrarian community that still exists in China, whereas in the 50s, half of us Americans were farmers. Now it's less than 2% of us are farmers. So a lot of our food is produced around the world. You can get these beautiful summer crops actually in the winter by getting them from the southern hemisphere, because the northern hemisphere are the seasons that we enjoy, and then in the southern hemisphere they're switched. So because of the way that the world rotates and tips on its axis, depending on if it's winter or summer for us. So in South Africa, when everyone is celebrating Christmas, they usually do it on the beach and they're wearing shorts and t-shirts because it is not snowing. They do not have a white Christmas down in South Africa. So, or anywhere in Africa, it's summer there when it's winter here. So that's why we can still get these crops year round, but they're always going to be more expensive. Because some of these melons are easy to ship around the world, you're going to have less of an availability out of season than you would in season. So over the next few months, I encourage you to go to your local farmer's market, because there's going to be a lot of varieties of melons there that you can't find in a grocery store because they're difficult to ship. And really, it's only best, if you can put them in a truck and get them to the destination and sell them. So I recommend, besides the ones that we're going to talk today, there's a huge diversity of different kinds of melons to enjoy. So branch out, try new things, and enjoy them. So as you can see, this is a large fruit. Technically, botanically, it's a berry called a pepo, P-E-P-O, which basically means it has sort of a tube of seeds inside without any divided sections. And so I'll go ahead and cut this in half for you so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this is a common cantaloupe, and you can see in the middle, the seeds are all centrally located. You can easily scoop these out and enjoy the flesh around it. The rind on the outside is hard, and it's got this netting. And so this netting and the hard rind make it easier to ship because it can hold its moisture for a longer period of time. So that's why you'll see these all over the place in almost any grocery store that you go to. The reason they call it a muskmelon is because it's not really musky. It has an earthy, sweet odor. I wish that this was smell-o-vision, because this room smells absolutely fantastic, because I have quite a few muskmelons to look at. And so it's almost like I have a scented candle in here, but it's completely natural. So it's kind of making me hungry. So you can see how the seeds are arranged. If you cut into the middle of a cucumber, or if you've ever eaten a sliced cucumber or sliced cucumbers to put them on your eyes, this is the arrangement of the seeds on the inside. So this is the arrangement of the seeds of a pepo. So a fruit is a very expensive thing for a plant to make. It is the most expensive thing because this is all starch and sugar. And so it takes a lot of sun energy to create this, which is why in the summer, that's when we usually get our fruits, is because the day is longer and you need more sun, and that power of the sun, the leaves of the plant, of any plant, will use the power of the sun and breathe in air, carbon dioxide. I mean, not really breathe, I'm anthropomorphizing there. Plants don't have lungs, but they take in carbon dioxide and water, and with the power of the sun, turn that into carbohydrates. So you need a lot of sun to make that happen, and that's why they make these delicious fruits during the summer. But in the fall, you're not going to have fruits being produced. You might harvest them, but you are not going to be growing fruits in the fall. So it smells so good. So this is a common muskmelon that we all know. This is a cantaloupe. All melons grow on a trailing vine. So you can either put them in a corner of a garden bed and let them grow out of the bed over onto the ground to save space in your actual garden bed, or you can actually grow them up a trellis. Melons are really heavy though. So if you wanted to use vertical space to grow a cucurbit, which is this family, but especially a melon, what you would do is maybe go to the dollar store and get some cheap pantyhose, or even if you buy a bag of fruit and it comes in one of those plastic net bags, save those, because then once the little yellow flowers get pollinated and a fruit starts to form, tie a little hammock around that little fruit, leaving it plenty of room so that as the fruit grows, it'll be supported by that hammock on the trellis, and the fruit won't break off before it becomes ripe, because these are about 95% water and they're very, very heavy. So that'll allow you to enjoy, if you have a really small garden bed, it will allow you to enjoy these without them taking up your entire bed, so you can still grow your tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, which are also fruits that grow on bushes. So you'll be able to fit more in your bed if you grow these on a trellis. Okay, so your common cantaloupe. I wanted to show you, not only is this cantaloupe, this was only a $5 cantaloupe, the most expensive melon in the world is also a cantaloupe. So this cantaloupe is a Yubori King, and it is grown in Japan, and it is a variety of cantaloupe. It's a version of a muskmelon, and it's sold for, this one, it sold for $29,000 US American dollars in 2018. A pair of these sold in 2020 for $45,000. And the reason being is that in Japan, that's where bonsai originated. They're very much into sort of micromanagement of plants. It's amazing, precision, things of that nature. So these melons are grown in a controlled environment year round. And as the fruits develop, they start to pick the most beautiful ones. They'll break off most of the fruits on a vine. If you can imagine a vine or any tree, any plant, if it produces a fruit, it only has so many leaves. And those leaves can only capture so much light, air, and water to create starch. So if you pull most of the fruits off of a vine, all the starch that it can create is going to be put into 1 or 2 fruits rather than 8 or 10 fruits. This is something we call fruit thinning. Any orange you've ever bought at the store or peach, a farmer went through and pulled off about half the fruit on a particular tree, because if you had more fruits there, yes, you'll have more fruits to sell, but the quality of the fruit will not be as good. It won't be as sweet and delicious. So if you remove a lot of the fruits, if you have a lot of them there, the plant will put all of its energy into 1 or 2 fruits, and they're exquisite. So that's what they do with the Yubori Kings. And they grow the fruits, they shade them, they wrap them in white paper, they massage them with cotton gloves so that they have a gorgeous and perfect skin. And it's part of Japanese culture, Japanese gift culture, that you want to buy beautiful and expensive gifts, especially if you can afford it, to give honor to your guests or to your friends or loved ones. And so often businesses they don't just put a price on these, they actually auction them, the most beautiful melons in the world. They auction them, and that's how they get to such a high price. And then they always give them as gifts. They don't split these open and eat them. If you go to Japan, you can buy a lower grade Yubori King, but it's still going to cost you about $200 US. And if I had money to burn, this is the kind of stuff that I would buy. It's ridiculous, but like, what a cool thing on a bucket list. If this tastes as delicious as it does for $5, I can only imagine what a $200 melon is, even though it's considered kind of a cast off in comparison to the $28,000 one. So let's move on to the next muskmelon. This is a common one everybody knows. I unfortunately dropped it and put a crack in it. But this is a honeydew, and it has a little bit of a smell. It's not as musky and strong as the other melons that are in this box here, but it also is considered a muskmelon because it has a smell when it's ripe. In order to select a good melon that you know is ripe, what you're going to do is you're going to pick up these melons and you're going to give them a sniff. Now, don't worry if you pick up a honeydew or a cantaloupe and it doesn't smell, because that just means it's not ripe yet. With the muskmelon family, they're actually picked when they're unripe. Not seriously unripe, but a little unripe. Like this guy's going to be bright green in the field, and once it starts to get this yellowy, creamy flesh, and the stem starts to crack a little bit on the that connects to the melon here, they'll go ahead and pick it. They have to be picked by hand, which is why melons are expensive. You can't have a machine do it for you. They're picked by hand, and then these guys, the muskmelons, will continue to ripen after you bring them home. So long as you don't need to serve that melon the next day and you can wait up to a week, bring it home, wash it, because sometimes it might be waxed or sprayed to keep it from ripening too fast. Wash it really well, and then set it out on your countertop to let it continue to ripen, because these are climacteric fruits. We've talked about this before. Climacteric fruits are fruits that continue to ripen after you pick them. Like when you pick up a mango or an avocado and it's hard as a rock, but you leave it out and it ripens slowly, and then you have a perfect fruit. Same thing with these guys. And you'll notice, just give it a little sniff every day and you'll start to smell it kind of develop, which is why we call these muskmelons. But if you cut into it, even if it smells and it's no good, remember, you can always bring things back to the grocery store. The grocery business is a dog-eat-dog business, and people want to try to keep your business. So just keep your receipt and return it. But often, if you use one of those little shopper cards with your phone number, they can go ahead and pull up your receipt anytime, and you can return it for another melon. Sometimes people will give you a refund. I usually just ask for the same thing again. So another type of muskmelon. Then I have a few other interesting kinds. This one is called a golden kiss, and it's a cross between a canary melon and a certain type of cantaloupe. These can be crossed together to create different kinds of melons. And it looks kind of neat, like a little football or a little basketball. And these are also supposed to be amazingly delicious. They have a more kind of crisp skin crisp flesh on the inside, but they're supposed to taste like a super powerful cantaloupe. This one is called a honey melon, and it's developed in a certain area in China, a certain province in China, and there's actually a town named after these type of melons, and they're extremely popular, also with a crisp flesh, but it looks like very similar to a cantaloupe with this beautiful netting on the outside. Okay, one of the last Cucumis mellows, because the species are all Cucumis mellow, which means that they can cross with each other and make another melon that would be fertile. So, which means you could save its seeds and plant them again. So this one is a Korean melon. This one is also a muskmelon. And it does have a smell, but to me, it smells like, just me, my personal opinion, smells like a mix between a rubber eraser and a cantaloupe. It smells good, but it has like a pungent smell. It has a beautiful, let me cut this for you, white insides, and it's got this same kind of pepo seed arrangement. This is it's supposed to be eaten a little bit more crisp, and it's not as sweet as most melons. Another one you'll find that's the same species as this, that's developed in Korea, is a Korean horned melon. So it'll look just like this, but it has little horns all over it, and it actually has a green flesh with green seeds. That's another really good one to try. So go to your different markets, try different things. It's just a fun experience to try different kinds of melons. But I feel like once melons moved across the world, and nobody really knows where melons originated because they've been traded in the ancient world, because the seeds can easily be dried and transported over long distances. They found melon seeds in all sorts of ancient tombs and things. Nobody really knows where they originated. But I think when Asian people, the Asian cultures got a hold of melons, they just created so much diversity in the melons that we know today. So, it smells so good. Good and different. Okay, the last one we're going to talk about, everybody knows really well. It is the, quintessential fruit of summer. And this is a watermelon. So watermelons are not, they cannot cross with a muskmelon. The other species, the ones we've talked about, is Cucumis mellow. This one here is Citrullus lanatus. So these two cannot cross together, even though they have the same common parent and they're in the same family. The cucurbits, these guys can't cross with anybody. They can only cross with other types of watermelon. And I don't know if you can hear it. I wish you could feel it. This feels hollow and tight when I tap on it. And that's how you know that you have a good melon from the store. This one happens to be a seedless variety, so it doesn't have quite, like normally if you're gonna pick a big watermelon that has seeds inside, you're gonna pick up the big watermelon. Don't leave it in the container when you're tapping on it. Often they're like come in on a pallet in those big boxes that you could like make a kid's playhouse out of. If you tap on the melons when they're against the other melons, it doesn't really give you a true read of if it sounds hollow. So you always look for a nice yellow spot on it. On the big melons, it's going to be, like kind of a large yellow or white spot on it. That means it laid on the ground for a really long time while it was developing. Then pick up the melon. Sometimes melons can be pretty heavy. You have a friend pick one up for you and tap it. And you'll be able to hear the difference. Some will sound tighter. Some will sound kind of like a lower thunk, thunk, thunk. And that's what I look for. And I always get a good watermelon. Again, if on the occasion that I don't, I turn around and I bring that back, because this watermelon would cost me $2 in Arizona. It costs me $7 here, sometimes $8. And so it's not really worth it to spend that on a fruit and not be able to enjoy it, especially during the summer. So these are like 96, 97% water. This one does not have seeds. Other ones do. And the seeds actually are actually the most nutritious part of the watermelon. So it is a very popular snack in Israel, China, and Vietnam. In the Vietnamese New Year and the Chinese New Year, they will take watermelon seeds and dry them and then toast them in a little bit of oil with salt, and they're delicious. Israel, this is also very popular. They actually grow them locally there, save the seeds, and then cook them. In African cultures, they will grind them into flour. And in fact, how they got to the New World, the seeds were actually brought over by enslaved people and planted in the South. So, and that was hundreds of years ago that happened. But that's how they were introduced to America, was through the transatlantic slave trade. So often watermelons are negatively associated with African peoples, and that was because of the upset by their captors, because when they were freed, when people were freed and moved north during the summer, and when they had land holdings, they would often grow watermelons, and so they were negatively associated with freed peoples, which is completely ridiculous because watermelons are amazing and delicious. So enjoy watermelons when you can. We've got quite a selection of them. This is just a seedless one. You'll find red varieties. If you can ever get a chance to find a Moon and Stars watermelon, which is like a dark green watermelon with little moon yellow on it. It's like the sweetest watermelon you've ever had. You can also find, there's quite a few tribes in the Southwest, like the Akimel Odom tribe and the Tana Autumn tribe and the Northeastern Navajo tribe, that grow yellow and orange watermelons. They look like this on the outside, but they're different colors on the inside, and they have a different taste. I mean, they still taste like a watermelon, but they have different flavor notes. So if you ever get a chance to try weird heirloom watermelons, give it a whirl, because I mean, it's just so great to eat different things that are diverse like that. And you can save the seeds, plant them, and then see what they give you the following year, because they only cross with other watermelons. So you might be able to get some variety in what you plant. So currently it's 1:20, so why don't we go ahead and turn it over for questions, and we can talk about melons or anything else in the garden that you would want to talk about.
Thanks, Sherilyn. So I haven't had any questions pop up, but I've had a lot of first-time melon growers commenting on how helpful these tips are. And so I wondered if you could just sort of give us a nice overview. If you're a first-time melon grower, how you set it up, where do you go with it? Just kind of a 1, 2, 3 ABC for us.
Okay, first of all, if you're a first-time melon grower, a first-time grower of anything, you know, give it a Goog, look it up online, and find out how far apart you put plants or seeds. Often people see a little tiny seedling, like, here's a tomato, I'm going to put another tomato right next to it. No, ma'am. That tomato, if it's an indeterminate tomato, or since we're talking about melons, a melon plant needs to spread out. If you're putting it up on a chain link fence, you want one melon, and 6 feet away, you want another one, because they need room to spread out. And the further away, the better, so that air can get through them. Often, people will plant things too close together here in the South. And if we have a wet summer, powdery mildew can be a real problem. So you need things to be able to dry out in between. And so that's super important. Make sure they have enough sun. Often people will come to me and they say, well, I get 2 hours of sunlight. Can't I grow? It's like, no, you can grow herbs maybe. Mint loves it a little shady, but you can't grow a fruit, because a fruit requires a lot of sunlight. So a bare minimum 6 hours a day. Also, I recommend getting something with a little bit of nitrogen and more phosphorus and potassium. So when you look at a bag of fertilizer, often people will pick up 10-10-10. And that is, you know, it's a chemical fertilizer. And it's usually used for lawns, and it's balanced because it's 10-10-10. But if you put too much nitrogen on plants, nitrogen is made to develop leaves, which all plants need. But if you hose one of these fruiting crops with nitrogen and you don't get enough phosphorus and potassium in PK, those are the 3 numbers always in that order, then you end up with a ton of gorgeous green leaves and no fruit. So it's better if you get something that's like 2-4-6 or 4-7-12 or something. They're all different. When they're kind of crazy numbers like that, they're usually natural fertilizers. That's what I usually go with, because they don't take a lot of fossil fuels to make. And they are from the waste stream of like meat production. So blood meal, bone meal, things like that. They're basically reusing sort of turning trash into cash, if you like, byproducts of another industry. Rather than them going in a landfill, they grind them down, sanitize them, and use them as fertilizer, which is what we used to do back in the day. If you killed a chicken, you buried it, you know, you eat the meat and you bury everything in your compost pile or in the yard somewhere, because, not that I recommend that for a small compost pile, but nothing left the land. It was a circular system. The garbage for one thing is the food for another thing. And that's sort of, now everybody's getting back to that idea of like, when you compost in your yard, you keep that stuff from leaving. You might be bringing stuff into your home system, but a lot less of it leaves out. You try to enrich the soil that you have. So a good amount of compost, loamy, well-drained soil. I know that doesn't exist here because of clay, but if you mix up the clay with good amount of compost, plant your plant in there, give it plenty of room to spread out, fertilize it once a month, no matter what. Always read the directions. Don't just assume and dump things on the ground. Always read the label, and fertilize it about once a month. and plenty of water. Like, don't water it every day. It's better to do deeply and infrequently, especially during the summer. It drives the plant's roots down, so they're more drought tolerant. And then just watch your stuff grow. Yeah, that would be my recommendation generally for starting, but definitely during the summer when it's hot, there's lots of bugs and things. Yeah.
Thanks, Sherilyn. So you got one of the questions, which is around watering. The next question is perhaps a whole nother session. This person says, I need help. I need a fertilizer info session. I don't understand what any of that means. So maybe next week is fertilizer.
Maybe. That actually would be a good one. Why don't we do fertilizer next? Because I still want to talk about squashes, but right now fertilizer is very, very important. I mean, you can also, we could do fertilizer. Next week we have off, sorry.
Okay.
After that, let's just talk fertilizer, shall we? I mean, people need to know that, because then I can also talk about the food products that you can use as fertilizer as well. But yes, you need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but also the most important thing that you need in a soil is lots of microbiological activity. And so, you know, our current farming system, the big conventional farming system, see soil as just dirt, like a medium that plants grow in, and you give the plant everything it needs through chemicals. Well, you can grow plants that way, but if you have, they're very dependent on you in that regard. So, you know, you don't give the plant, like, you don't build up its environment around it so that if it runs into a problem like a pest or something, you don't have to necessarily step in, because a plant can't get up and walk away, which is why they're biochemical machines that create these chemicals. So plants do amazing things, like, you know, they can't fight a pest, but maybe they become more bitter so that they're not as attractive to the pest. Or some plants will put off an attractant out into the environment, a pheromone that will attract the enemy of the pest that's eating it. So they will attract the eater of the pest. So plants are amazing in that regard. But yeah, we could totally do a session on fertilizer. Consider it done. 2 weeks from now, we'll do fertilizer, and then we'll get to squashes, because then there'll be a lot more squashes I can talk about, because right now at the farmer's market, squashes are just coming out. I'd love for you to see some of the local ones that you can't buy at the grocery.
Awesome. That sounds good. I've already got a lot of like, yay, we got our wish. So that's great. The next question is, what is the sweetest melon you can get?
You know, it really depends on picking the right one. So, remember how I said these aren't climacteric? In order to pick a good watermelon off of a vine, what you do is you leave it there, and the vine that comes out of here, what it will do, because there's a main vine and then these little kind of offshoots come out, and that's where these will be connected. And the vine that's closest to, if you have, say, 5 flowers on here, you got 5 melons developing, the one that's closest to the ground, the stem entering the ground, is the one that's going to develop first. And when that stem that connects to it, that side stem, starts to die back and the leaf that's connected to it dies, it's time to pick your watermelon. If you try to pick it before then, and this doesn't come off really easy, then what you're doing is you're picking an unripe watermelon. It's not really good for much. So, and you can't return that one to the grocery store because you grew it yourself. So, I mean, I've had some watermelons that are sweet as candy, and I know some of these muskmelons in here are like unbelievably sweet, but I would go with probably one like a cantaloupe. I love I can't remember the name of it. It's called a frog melon, but it's in Espanol. I can't remember frog in Espanol. But there's a frog melon that you can get in the Southwest that's amazing. Is it Rana? Because it was another name. It was like, ooh, I'll look it up. But I love a canary melon. Ooh, they're expensive, but they're like bright yellow and gorgeous. There are some melons that you'll find at Asian groceries that are not meant to be sweet. You know, the Armenian cucumber I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, even though I didn't have one to show you because they're not coming off my vine yet. There's one growing in the backyard, but it's not here yet. That's technically a melon, and it has no sweetness at all. It's like a cucumber. So not all melons are meant to be sweet. But the ones that we eat here in America and enjoy in America and Europe we like our sweets. And so a really good watermelon, yeah, a canary melon. I love a canary melon, but I mean, you can tell just by the smell, it's just so strong and lovely. So yeah, it isn't a certain variety. It's like it's picking the right one at the right time.
Maybe it was Sapo is the word you were looking for.
Sapo, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sapo melon. And it's this bright green, beautiful melon with like spots on it. It looks like a frog skin, and it's green, but it sort of has like the texture of a cantaloupe, but it has like almost like a citrusy-esque and a little grassy note to it. It's amazing. There's a lot out there to try.
Awesome. So one more question I think we have time for just at the end, but someone says, do I have to grow melon on a fence? Can I grow it on the ground?
You can totally grow it on the ground. Absolutely. Just make sure you watch out for things like mice and squirrels. Some people put a little cage around their melon once it starts to grow to keep anything from messing with it. You can absolutely grow it out over the ground, but if you only have a small, you can even grow one in a big pot, because you can grow it and it'll grow out over the ground. Just make sure it's not on anything like concrete. If it's growing on concrete, just put a little straw underneath it, and it will protect it. So you don't have to, you can absolutely grow it in the ground. That's how they do it. That's why you walk out into like a field of watermelons. They don't have them growing on trellises, but often we don't have a lot of space. And so I'll often encourage people to grow them up aside. Oh, something you should go and see, the Carolina Giant. If you haven't been to the fair, like some people go to the fair, and when I grew up, I didn't know anything about the 4-H area as I was a little kid. So if I ever got to go to the fair, I only saw the rides and the funnel cakes. There's a whole agricultural area that was the original fair before it had rides and stuff, like from antiquity, basically. And here in North Carolina, and not every fair is like this, here in North Carolina, they have gigantism in plants. So everybody's entering like, you can enter like, this is the most beautiful potato or whatever, but they also have massive pumpkins and gigantic like 200-pound watermelons, and that is worth it. It doesn't cost anything to see except for the price of admit, like you pay to get in. Go to the ag tents, the ag area, like make sure to hit that, especially if you have little kids, because those fruits and vegetables are going to be bigger than them. It's the most awesome thing. Plus it'll keep them distracted a little bit from spending all your money on on rides. Anyway. Thank you,
awesome.
everyone.
Well, I think we could keep going on this one, but we will come back in not next week, but the week after next for fertilizer.
We're going to talk about it. Food fertilizers, chemical fertilizers will make it happen.
All right. Thank you, Sherilyn. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.